Vrex high sensors registered an impossibility at 1423 galactic standard. Within the absolute psionic void of the Kepler Expanse, where even the Silence Concord's collective consciousness withered to whispers, a human vessel operated at full capacity. Navigation, communication, life support, all functioning without telepathic guidance. Commander Zeth Kree's neural tendrils quivered. No species survived complete psionic isolation. The void stripped away mental bonds that held consciousness together, reducing sentient beings to catatonic shells within minutes. Yet aboard that crude metal hull, Elena Vasquez gripped the nav controls. Stay calm, her knuckles whitened. They can't read what they can't touch. Heart rate climbing, 72 to 89 beats per minute. She felt their sensors crawling across her ship's hull, measuring, analyzing, failing to comprehend. Her thoughts remained locked in her skull, a fortress they couldn't breach. "Isolate and board," Zeth Kree commanded. His neural tendrils pulsed with bioluminescent hunger as the words translated through copper-tasting static. "I must understand how this creature thinks without the Concord." Through their shared consciousness, his crew felt his excitement ripple outward, part terror, part desperate curiosity. The Silence Concord had governed galactic civilization for 10,000 years through absolute telepathic dominion. If humans could function independently, everything would change. Counselor Vexithara's consciousness drifted across 47 star systems in a heartbeat, touching millions of minds simultaneously. Perfect, she thought, feeling collective agreement ripple back. 3 million years had taught them that telepathy was evolution's ultimate gift, until now. She reviewed the xenobiological files, 1,200 species cataloged, 1,199 deemed mind-capable through various degrees of psionic potential. One glaring exception, humans. Classification, Homo sapiens. Psionic rating, 0.00. Complete neural silence. Evolutionary dead ends. First speaker KL-Non transmitted across the quantum mesh. Trapped in singular consciousness. Unable to share thought, emotion, or experience. Primitive chemical synapses firing in isolation. Yet Elena Vasquez had somehow navigated through absolute psionic void, a feat requiring telepathic coordination between ship and pilot. The impossibility gnawed at their collective certainty. How could mind-dead creatures accomplish what required transcendent consciousness? Human files indicated only crude verbal communication, emotional instability, and chaotic individual thought patterns. The contradiction demanded investigation, or elimination. Elena Vasquez's diplomatic vessel died 14 parsecs from Concord Prime. Not destroyed, ceased. The silence. Concord's gravity snares drained every electrical system, every photon of stored power, leaving her drifting in absolute cold and darkness. 7 hours later, they boarded expecting a corpse. Instead, Elena kicked open the hatch. The violent clang made the arbiters recoil. She stepped onto their crystalline deck, breathing recycled air that should have turned toxic hours ago. Core temperature, 37.2 Kurgs, hot enough to boil Vraxian blood. Each footstep rang like a war drum through chambers designed to crush lesser minds with telepathic pressure. Let them hear me coming, she thought, and smiled at the biosensors tracking her impossible vitals. The Concord's collective consciousness recoiled. This creature should have suffocated, frozen, or collapsed under neural bombardment. Yet here stood Elena Vasquez, communication specialist from a species that shouldn't exist, with steady heartbeat and unwavering gaze. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Silence Concord experienced uncertainty. Interrogator Prime, Zethka pressed crystalline tendrils deeper into the neural interface. Elena Vasquez sat motionless in the extraction chamber. Core temperature, 37.2 degrees Celsius. Neural activity, cascading chaos. Psionic signature, absolute zero. His extraction probes encountered nothing but biological static. "Where are your neural dampeners?" Zethka's voice cracked across 17 frequencies, betraying his growing panic. Elena met his compound eyes. "What dampeners?" Her words rang at 85 decibels, impossible clarity that made the chamber's suppressors shriek with harmonic feedback. "Do not lie to me, creature." Zethka's tendrils writhed with bioluminescent frustration. "No organic mind resists extraction," Elena smiled. The predatory expression made him step back. "Maybe you're just not trying hard enough." The Silence Concord calculated probabilities. 0.0003% chance of natural psionic immunity across 847 conquered species. Yet this death world aberration sat before them, her mind an impenetrable fortress. Human consciousness wasn't technology. It was evolution's cruelest joke. Elena Vasquez raised her hand, palm forward, fingers splayed. The Silence Concord's translation matrices collapsed into static. For 30,000 years, their psionic interpreters had decoded 847 species thoughts instantly. Yet this human's gesture, a simple arrangement of bone and flesh, transmitted meaning through light waves striking optical receptors. Impossible. Senior interpreter Cathas watched Elena's facial muscles contract in precise sequences. 43 distinct micro-expressions cascaded across her features in 2.7 seconds. Each movement carried semantic weight their technology couldn't process. The human was speaking without thoughts. Elena tilted her head 15 degrees, narrowed her eyes, pressed her lips together. Cathas's translation implants screamed error codes. This death world aberration was bypassing telepathy entirely, encoding information in muscular contractions and skeletal positioning. The Concord had conquered galaxies by reading minds. But how do you read a species that speaks with their entire body? Elena's shoulders shifted, her stance widened. The message blazed clear despite their technological blindness. "I am not afraid." The Silence Concord faced their first untranslatable language. Human defiance made flesh. Commander Thexii observed the human detention bay through crystalline sensors, expecting chaos. Elena Vasquez's crew, 7 Death Worlders crammed into separate isolation pods, should have devolved into panic without telepathic coordination. The Silence Concord had witnessed this dissolution countless times across conquered species. Commander Thexii observed the human detention bay, expecting chaos. Elena Vasquez's crew, 7 Death Worlders in separate isolation pods, should have devolved into panic without telepathic coordination. The Concord had witnessed this dissolution countless times. Instead, impossibility unfolded. Elena's palm slammed against the barrier, 5 fingers splayed. Marcus saw it first, head snapping up from feigned unconsciousness. Then Sarah. Then all 7 crew members locked eyes with their captain through transparent walls. 5 fingers, hold position. Elena's fist tapped the barrier. Once, twice, 3 times. Sarah's breathing changed rhythm. The others matched unconsciously. Prepare countermeasure. Elena closed her fist. 7 humans smiled in unison. The Concord's tactical analysts calculated 847 possible hand combinations. Humans utilized 12,000. Worse, Elena's vocal cords produced subsonic frequencies below Concord hearing range, creating secondary communication layers. Her crew synchronized breathing patterns, heartbeats aligning through acoustic resonance. They were conducting a symphony the Silence Concord couldn't perceive, much less intercept. Primitive species require mental unity, Thek's Eye had declared in his report. Yet these humans achieved tactical precision through methods that predated telepathy by millions of years. They had weaponized their isolation. Elena's throat felt raw as she faced the High Council, but she forced her voice steady. Listen carefully. The aliens recoiled, not from thoughts, but from sound waves carrying meaning their technology couldn't intercept. 65 million years ago, asteroid impact drove our ancestors underground. In darkness, separated from hunting packs, we learned to coordinate through sound alone. Her larynx shaped each word with deliberate precision. Evolution rewarded survivors who could communicate complex strategies using only breath and tongue position. Vrexhi's membrane trembled. His species had achieved telepathy in mere millennia, crude, instinctive mind-touching. These humans had spent geological epochs perfecting verbal precision. Every consonant carried tactical data. Every vowel shift conveyed emotional nuance. Your minds are open because you evolved in safety, Elena continued. We developed 40 phoneme alphabets, recursive grammar, metaphorical abstraction, all because we couldn't beam thoughts directly. Privacy didn't make us weak. It forced us to build bridges using nothing but air and sound. The Concord's collective consciousness recoiled. Mental privacy hadn't created weakness. It had forged communication so sophisticated that telepaths appeared primitive by comparison. Admiral Zethkree's psychic tendrils recoiled as the tactical display revealed 47 conquered species. Each victory had followed the same pattern. Read enemy formations, anticipate maneuvers, strike coordination nodes. The Silence Concord had never faced an opponent whose thoughts remained locked away. Elena Vasquez sat motionless in her restraints, watching holographic fleets materialize. 17 species annihilated through perfect psionic intelligence. Each battle lasted mere hours once Concord mind readers penetrated enemy command structures. Billions of lives, entire civilizations snuffed out because these aliens could read their next move. Never again, she swore silently. Impressive, she said aloud, letting ice creep into her voice. Several Concord officers flinched at the sound. But you've never fought blind, have you? Never faced an enemy whose thoughts you couldn't steal. The Admiral's neural crown dimmed. 5,000 years of military doctrine crumbled around a single realization. The Silence Concord had evolved perfect predators for reading minds. Against humans, creatures who thought in impenetrable solitude, they were strategically helpless. Proximity alarms shattered the High Council's meditation chamber. The Silence Concord's collective consciousness rippled with terror as 67 devourers materialized from quantum shadows. Ancient holes scarred with 12,000 years of victories. Vrexhi's tendrils trembled as targeting solutions flooded their shared mind. Every engagement protocol demanded the same opening. Seize enemy thoughts, turn their weapons inward, watch civilizations collapse from within. Psionic lances struck out and encountered nothing, absolute void. The same terrifying emptiness they discovered in Elena Vasquez's skull. Impossible, Vrexhi's voice cracked across 6 harmonics. Ancient records show devourers possessed telepathic capabilities. Elena's laughter cut through the chamber, sharp, knowing, dangerous. Still don't understand, do you? She stepped closer to the tactical display, watching devourer ships move in perfect formation. For millennia, you've been reading their old battle records, their ancient psychic signatures. She traced a finger along the display. But what if those weren't their real capabilities? What if they wanted you to think you defeated them? The color drained from Vrexhi's bioluminescent skin. Telepaths are easy to fool, Elena whispered. You only see what minds want to show you. 67 enemy vessels hung in perfect formation, immune to mental control, weapons charging with methodical precision. The Concord faced their first fair fight in 10,000 years. 73 milliseconds remained before the ancient fleet breached their outer shields. The Silence Concord's war nodes screamed in telepathic chaos, a cacophony of terror from beings who had never needed to speak across mental static. Listen to me! Elena's voice cut through as she sprinted into the neural hub. Her vocal cords hit 440 hertz, a frequency that somehow pierced their mental noise. Vrexhi's tendrils went still. For the first time in his life, he was hearing instead of thinking. If you want to survive, you'll do exactly what I say. Elena's chest heaved, but her voice remained steady. Repeat after me. Shield vectors, Mark 739. Vrexhi's translator nodes registered the acoustic impossibility. She was teaching them to coordinate through sound waves, like their own primitive ancestors. Shield vectors, Mark 739, he vocalized, the words feeling alien on his unused speech organs. Within seconds, Concord commanders across 17 star systems began vocalizing target coordinates, their voices crackling through electromagnetic channels they'd abandoned eons ago. Defense grids that had faltered in telepathic silence suddenly synchronized through Elena's verbal protocols. The ancient fleet, expecting mental chaos, encountered something they'd never faced, an enemy that could coordinate without thought touch. The Silence Concord witnessed evolution in reverse, and impossibly, it was working. 6 months later, the Silence Concord observed an impossibility, their empire's first diplomatic academy. Elena Vasquez stood before representatives from 47 non-telepathic species, beings previously dismissed as mind-dead vermin. Now they learned human verbal arts. Elena watched her student, a silicon-based rockborn, slowly carve the word friend into its own mineral shell. The alien's movements were deliberate, almost reverent. 6 months ago, you would have dismissed it as mind-dead, Elena thought, glancing at the bewildered Concord observers. Language is sculpture, she told them, running her fingers along the carved letters. Each word shapes thought. Each thought builds bridges between minds that were never meant to touch. The Rockborn's carved message pulsed with bioluminescent pride. The Silence Concord's millennia-old supremacy crumbled daily. Species they'd conquered through psychic dominance now communicated independently. The ancient enemy, immune to telepathic control, had requested peace talks through human mediators. Galactic Council records showed staggering statistics. Diplomatic incidents down 89%. Trade agreements up 340%. Elena's verbal communication protocols spread across 3 spiral arms. Most disturbing to Concord leadership, their own young began requesting vocal cord modifications. Evolution itself bent toward human innovation. The Death Worlders hadn't conquered through force. They'd conquered by teaching others to speak. Try again, Elena said gently. Young Kethri struggled with the word hello. 6 rotations since the war ended, and she still marveled at these moments. The juvenile's breathing apparatus wheezed and clicked, producing something that might charitably be called syllables. Ha! Halo! Kethri's neural crown flickered with embarrassment. Perfect. Elena smiled. You're thinking in sound now, not just thoughts. Vrexhi observed from the shadows, his tendrils twitching with something he couldn't name. Pride? Fear? Wonder? The human demonstrated patience that defied Concord understanding, repeating the same syllables while juveniles struggled with concepts their neural architecture had never evolved to process. What disturbed Vrexheim most wasn't the teaching, it was the learning. Young Concord minds, supposedly perfected through millennia of telepathic evolution, discovered joy in this primitive communication method. They giggled, a human behavior previously thought impossible for their species, when successfully forming words like friendship and individual thought. Elena had named her institution the Academy of Silent Speech, but the Silence Concord recognized its true purpose, teaching an entire empire to think beyond the collective mind. The human had weaponized what they considered their greatest weakness, mental isolation, into their species' most revolutionary gift. Privacy, it seemed, bred not loneliness, but creativity. Across the neural networks of the Silence Concord, a single truth rippled through 1 trillion connected minds. They had been wrong about humanity. Elena Vasquez stood before their grand assembly not as a primitive voice speaker, but as something unprecedented, a being who had weaponized silence itself against their telepathic dominance. The humans, dismissed as mere noisemakers in a universe of mental communion, had proven that true communication transcended thought sharing. Where the Concord had seen isolation as weakness, humanity revealed it as strength. Mental privacy, the very trait that made humans immune to telepathic control, had forced them to develop communication so sophisticated it made telepathy seem crude. Where the Concord enforced unity through forced mental connection, humanity offered something more powerful, chosen bonds forged through trust, sacrifice, and shared purpose. As Elena's hand clasped the crystalline appendage of the Concord's prime speaker in their first voluntary alliance, the collective realized that evolution itself was changing course. The age of mental supremacy was ending. In its place rose something terrifyingly beautiful, the age of humans.